From President Biden, and it's kind of long, but I do want to read some of it to you. It says, Jill and I are mourning the deaths of those whose lives were cut short due to more senseless gun violence, and thinking of all of the survivors whose lives are forever changed. What should have been a joyous back-to-school season in Winder, Georgia, has now turned into another horrific reminder of how gun violence continues to tear our communities apart. Students across the country are learning how to duck and cover instead of how to read and write. We cannot continue to accept this as normal. The statement goes on to talk about the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act that was signed into law. Really one of the only pieces of gun control legislation passed in decades. The statement from President Biden concludes, after decades of inaction, Republicans in Congress must finally say enough is enough and work with Democrats to pass common sense gun safety legislation. We must ban assault weapons and high-capacity magazines once again, require safe storage of firearms, enact universal background checks, and end immunity for gun manufacturers. These measures will not bring those who were tragically killed today back, but it will help prevent more tragic gun violence from ripping more families apart. That's the statement from President Biden. And